Hey everybody, I'm Joey, the owner of Kirby's Nursery, and today we're going to talk about what makes Florida a little bit of a challenge to garden in. So many times we hear folks that have moved to Florida from another place say, I had a gorgeous garden in the Northeast or the Midwest, and I came to Florida and it's just a challenge. I don't always understand that because I was born and raised here in Florida. I've only spent 3 of my 44 years not in the Florida area. So to me, Florida gardening is pretty natural. So today I'm going to share our best tips and tricks to get you gardening in Florida. So Florida has lots of unique challenges, and the first one is picking the right plants. If you come to a local garden center like here at Kirby's or use University of Florida's IFAS website, those are great resources for finding plants that grow here in our area. You may have to give up some of your northern favorites, things like lilac, clematis. They just don't grow in our southern climate. It's a common misconception that because we're Florida and we're sunny and we're tropical, that everything grows here. And unfortunately, that's just not true. We do have to make some selections. When you're making your selections, remember that Florida, and especially our area, we are zone 9B. We're almost zone 10A. And that means that our average low temperature in the wintertime is 25 degrees. So that tells us something about the cold, but it doesn't tell us everything about the heat. So especially if you're from up north in zones 4 or 5, there's a lot of plants that are listed as growing from zone 4 to 9 or 5 to 9. And that means that some of the plants from North Dakota or Illinois or Iowa are expected to grow this far south in Florida, and that's a little bit tough for them. So make sure that when you're selecting plants, you use local resources to figure out what does grow well here. So in Florida, not only do you want to pick the right plants, but you want to plant them in the right place. We are the sunshine state, which means that we have long days filled with hot sunlight. And that's a little tough on our plants sometimes. So a couple of definitions will help you figure out what plants to put in the right place. First, if we say full sun, we mean at least 6 hours of direct sun each day. And I said at least. That doesn't mean sun up to sundown necessarily. That's a lot of sun for most plants to take. When we say part sun, we usually mean something 4 to 6 hours of sun. Part shade, we might mean 2 to 4 hours of sun, and shade, of course, below that. And so you want to pick plants that go in those particular areas properly. You don't want to plant a plant that loves shade in a sunny area, and certainly you can't plant a plant that loves the sun in the shade. So make sure that you use that guideline to pick the right place for your plants to go as well. Timing is important in Florida as well, but we're lucky. We can garden 12 months out of the year. There's almost never a day in Florida when you can't get out in the garden and do something fun. But you do want to plant some plants at the right time of year. Probably the most critical one are vegetables. We always get folks that come in around Mother's Day and they ask us where the veggie plants are, and we sort of sheepishly have to tell them we don't have any vegetable plants because it's just not a great time to plant them by the time we get closer to our summer months. So for veggie gardens in particular, you want to start those now. Anywhere from about Valentine's Day through the end of March is the sweet spot for starting a spring vegetable garden. And then we're lucky because we get to do it again in the fall. We take a break in the summer, it's just way too hot. But when late August to September rolls around and we start to feel that first night with a little cooler air, we can plant our vegetable gardens again. So if you're planting landscape plants and flowers, you can plant just about any time of the year. The way I would order the seasons is spring, fall, winter, summer. That doesn't mean that summer's bad or that winter's bad. It just means they're not as ideal as the spring and the fall. Sometimes when the nighttime temperatures are a little bit cooler, plants will get off to a better start. So use that as a guide for picking the right time to plant your plants in Florida. So when you've got the right plants, the right place, and the right time picked out for getting out in your garden, we now want to make sure that we get things planted properly. Now, all over the country, there's different methods, different ways of planting. I'm going to give you what we do here in Florida to make sure that plants are successful. So the first thing to note is chances are you have really sandy soil in your backyard. That is what most of us have. That's a good thing for Florida because we do get a lot of heavy rain in the summer, and so it drains well. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't hold a lot of nutrients up near those plants. So for planting your outdoor plants in Florida, we're going to start with nice wide holes. We don't dig deep in Florida. We don't want to unsettle the dirt beneath the plant. It'll cause the plant to settle down and become low in the soil. We don't want to do that. If anything, we want our plants to be just a little bit above the existing level of the ground. That makes them a higher spot, not a low spot. When we get into rainy season and we have heavy rains, we want the rain to be able to move past that plant and not become a soggy spot right where our plants are planted. So we dig wide, not deep. Backfill with our great Kirby's planting soil. That's a rich mix of well-drained materials plus some organic nutrients to help your plants thrive, and your plants will be off to a great start. So the next thing that's really important for gardening well in Florida is proper watering. It does rain in Florida, a lot in the summertime, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to water your plants. You're going to have to do some watering, especially when they're new, to get them off to a great start. Our general rule of thumb for watering is to water plants daily for the first month, every other day for the second month, and about twice a week for the third month. Thereafter, after that 90-day period, most plants are good with one deep soaking each week. We always want to water in the morning, and we always want to water deeply. More water for bigger plants. If it's a large tree or a palm, it's obviously going to need a lot more water than smaller flowers. But make sure that we're watering deeply. Water needs to go all the way through those roots, beyond into the soil, to encourage roots to grow down and form really strong plants. So I said before that we're really lucky to live in Florida because we can garden almost 12 months out of the year, but that presents its own challenges. First, we have sort of a lack of seasons. 9 months out of the year we're hot and humid. We don't get a lot of a break from those high temperatures. And that's tough on our plants. Plus, our plants are asked to grow 12 months out of the year. Warm Decembers, warm Januaries will cause plants to grow even though it's technically winter time. So with Florida gardening, you're going to have to watch your plants a little bit more, maybe do a little bit more pruning, and make sure that you space them appropriately for the size that they're going to grow here in the Florida area. And so finally we've arrived at what I think is the biggest challenge to Florida gardening. It's what makes the summers tough, it's why we don't do vegetable gardens in the summertime, and it's the humidity. If you are from up north, there have probably been times when it was hotter on the thermometer where you live than it is in Florida. We have the Tampa Bay, the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean. They keep our temperatures down just a little bit, but so does the humidity. That high humidity through the summer means that we never really break 100 degrees, but man, does it feel like it's way hotter than it really is. And that's tough on us. It's also tough on our plants. Plants, like people, need to release water into the atmosphere. They don't sweat in quite the same way, but they do have some processes that help them cool their leaves that also help them in that process of releasing oxygen and taking in carbon dioxide. When it's too humid, that slows down just a little bit, and it can be a challenge for plants to grow. Also, you've probably noticed fungus or disease issues in your gardens when we get into rainy season combined with the humid season. And that's the real challenge for Florida. Keep an eye out for fungus issues. That can be in the sign of black spots on leaves, silvery sheen to any of your leaves may be a sign of fungus issues. And if you ever have a problem, come by with a piece or a sample of your plants and we'll be sure to make sure you get the right treatment. So we know that a lot of folks new to Florida are here to enjoy life, and they don't want to spend as much time in their gardens. That's fine. So 3 easy care flowers to add lots of color without a whole lot of extra maintenance are pentas, blue my minds, and bush daisies. Pentas, especially the dwarf varieties, stay compact, they give lots of color, and they bring butterflies. Blue my mind, very, very hardy, lots of delightful blue color. Lower to the ground, they're more like a ground cover. And finally, bush daisies, tried and true, bright yellow, and they get a little bit taller, 2 to 3 feet, so some nice height and some beautiful sunshine yellow color. I think there are 3 common mistakes that gardeners new to Florida make. The first is assuming that rain will water your plants. We do get rainy in the summertime, but it doesn't come until June. And even then, it's less consistent than you would think. So make sure that you follow the watering schedule we talked about previously and water your plants consistently, only skipping a day if we truly get an inch of rain. The second most common mistake is assuming that anything can get planted anywhere just because it's Florida. We do have to pick the right plants, the right place, and the right time for any of our gardens. And the third most common mistake is timing. Just make sure that you're planting at the right time, and that especially goes for veggie gardening. February and March for our spring gardens, September and October for our fall gardens. We're not going to plant in the winter, and we're not going to plant in the summer for our vegetable gardens. How do you grow lavender in Florida? That is a difficult question. A few years back, we toured a lavender farm in Delaware, which is a ways from here, right? You would think that it would have been lush and beautiful. They were having a hot, rainy summer, and it was the ugliest lavender farm you've ever been to. So, if you're having trouble with lavender in Florida, you're not alone. Our humidity in Florida is really, really tough on lavender. So, a few things you can do to get it growing well is plant it early to get it established before rainy season. Plant in pots, because then you can move it out of the heaviest rains, and you can use all well-drained soil. And then the third thing is, whether it's in the ground or in a pot, use something like our Kirby's planting soil, well-drained and rich, and that's going to help your lavender grow in Florida. So this question was from my godson Owen, who wanted to know the distance that citrus trees should be apart and how to water them to get them growing really well. And that's a great question. The first thing for citrus is to make sure that they're in full sun, which, as we talked about before, is at least 6 hours of good sunlight. As far as spacing, if you're doing full-size varieties, at least 10 to 15 feet in between each tree. We've talked about Florida being humid, and a little bit of spacing between the trees helps the air circulate well and keeps that humid air moving through so that it's not settling in on the trees that are too close together. And finally, for watering, for citrus trees, follow our standard watering. And then finally, after that 90-day period, one good deep watering each week for happy, healthy citrus trees. So while there isn't a specific fertilizer for Florida that will help your plants get through the heat, good fertilization will help keep your plants strong and healthy to help them battle the humidity, the rains, and the different challenges that Florida presents. Our favorite fertilizer for our landscape plants and outdoor plants is our Kirby's Special. It's an 848 with all of the micronutrients, so it's a complete and balanced fertilizer, custom blended by my father-in-law decades ago. You can use it on everything outdoors in your garden. Because our Florida soils are generally poor, you do find a lot of nematodes in them. Nematodes are little tiny microscopic worms that can feed on the roots. A couple of things you can do to reduce the number of nematodes is first use lots of good organic soil. They don't like the rich stuff that our plants like, so the more organic material you bring in, Kirby's planting soil, black cow, peat, that will keep nematodes away from that rich soil. The second thing is a nice heavy layer of mulch, a little bit more mulch on top, and that also reduces the number of nematodes. If you're specifically worried about nematodes for, say, vegetable gardening, you can always do what's called solarizing the soil before you go to plant your vegetables. That would be putting a tarp or something on the surface of the soil to raise the soil temperature. That'll kill those nematodes out so that for your next season of planting, they're gone.